There's a painful truth that many only realize after going too far in a toxic relationship. Not everyone who hurts you and walks away does so unintentionally. Some do it with calculated coldness and an ego you can't reach. And among them, the narcissist is a master of distorting reality. They don't just dodge accountability, they rewrite the entire story, casting themselves as the victim or the reluctant hero, while you sit there confused, unable to piece together what really happened. If you've ever found yourself in that state, questioning whether you're just too sensitive, too weak, or imagining things, then this video is for you. Together, we'll unpack the truth behind the silence, behind the smooth but empty justifications of the narcissist. You'll understand why they never apologize, why they never take responsibility, and how their silence itself becomes a razor-sharp weapon used to control your emotions. Stay with me until the end, because in the final segment I'll share something every survivor of a narcissistic relationship needs to hear in order to truly walk away and begin again. And if this message resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear might just be the turning point in your healing journey. Have you ever felt this way? A conversation left unfinished, a tear not yet dried, an apology that was never spoken, and then silence. No message, no explanation, not even a glance back. Just disappearance. As if you never existed. As if the pain you carried was just a disposable detail they tossed aside. But the cruelest part isn't the leaving. It's when they come back, not to apologize, but to act like nothing ever happened. They smile, send a message, even check in on you like you're the one who overreacted. And you, still holding on to love, still clinging to hope, begin to doubt your own emotions all over again. That's not a coincidence. That's a tactic. A psychological mechanism designed to protect their image and destroy your grasp on reality. A narcissist does not love the way you understand love. They don't see you as a human being with emotional depth. They see you as a mirror. As long as you reflect back the light that makes them feel powerful, they'll keep you close. But the moment you begin to reflect the parts they don't want to face, the insecurity, the mistakes, the selfishness, they shatter that mirror and go find a new one. That doesn't mean you weren't good enough. On the contrary, it's because you had emotional depth, honesty, and compassion that you became a mirror too terrifying for them to look into. They didn't want to see who they truly were, so they erased it by erasing you from the story. And the cruelty doesn't stop there. They don't just try to erase you from their memory, they try to erase you from yours. They twist the narrative, distort the truth, and leave you questioning your own reality. Was I just being too sensitive? Maybe I did overreact. Maybe they were hurting too, and that's why they acted this way. These thoughts looping in your mind are the very proof of their manipulation at work. That's why you feel exhausted without knowing why. Why you feel alone in your own story. You try to share the pain, but others don't understand, because they didn't do anything that bad, did they? But the pain caused by a narcissist isn't about any one specific act. It's about how they make you believe you weren't worthy of being hurt in the first place. And so you fall silent, not because you've forgiven, but because you no longer know where the story begins. Something strange happens when you live too long in a warped reality. You start to think you are the problem. You start to believe that if you're hurting, it must be because you were wrong. That if you still long for an apology, an explanation, an acknowledgement of your pain, then maybe you're just too weak. No, you are not wrong. You are simply a healthy person in a deeply disordered environment. And when a healthy mind tries to make sense of a mindset that refuses accountability, it will always feel lost. Narcissists don't deny fault because they don't know they're wrong. They deny it because they refuse to be wrong. In their world, admitting fault is a fatal blow to an already fragile ego. They build their self-image like a fortress, and any admission of guilt is like planting explosives beneath its foundation. So they protect it at all costs through denial, distortion, blame shifting, or calculated silence. That silence is not harmless. It's the most insidious form of manipulation. When you're in pain, you wait for a response. but it never comes. When you seek clarity, a conversation, you get only cold indifference. And when you reach out again, they say you're being dramatic, that it's all in the past, that you're clinging to something that no longer matters. The problem is that past was never truly closed. That wound was never truly healed. They walked away, leaving nothing but emptiness, and now they want you to act as if nothing ever happened. Do you know why? Because if they sat down and told the truth, they'd have to admit they hurt someone who genuinely loved them, someone who trusted them, forgave them, and tried countless times to preserve the connection. And once that truth is acknowledged, the mask falls. They can no longer be the kind one, the misunderstood one, or the victim of circumstance. To them, truth isn't something to honor, it's something to reshape, to serve their ego. If you're hurting, it must mean you're weak. If you react, it means you're out of control. If you ask questions, you're being difficult. And so you begin to learn silence. But that silence, once again, doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from despair. Because you've realized there's no way this person will ever truly hear you. Not because you haven't explained it clearly enough, but because they never intended to understand. The heartbreaking reality is you could cry, scream, or explain with every ounce of sincerity in your heart, and they would still turn away. Not because they didn't hear you, but because the only thing they're committed to protecting is the flawless image they've crafted of themselves. They're not afraid of losing you. They're afraid of losing the role they've played for so long, the role of the one who's always right. And at some point you're forced to make a choice, keep playing a part in a story where you're always cast as the villain, or walk away and finally live in alignment with your truth and your feelings. And then one day, you sit in the quiet and realize you no longer need the apology. Not because you didn't deserve one, but because you understand that it will never come from someone who lacks the courage to face the truth. They don't apologize not because they're innocent, but because to admit guilt would mean having to see you as a person, someone with emotions, wounds, and worth. And that's something they've never been able to do. A narcissist doesn't truly see you. They only see the version of you that serves their ego. When you agree, comply, and please, you're wonderful. But when you question, set boundaries, or reclaim your voice, you become the problem, the troublemaker, even the toxic one. This reversal isn't accidental. It's a strategy. A form of psychological judo where every natural reaction you have is flipped and weaponized against you. You cry, you're weak. You get angry, you're out of control. You go silent, you're manipulative. And yet all you're really doing is trying to be understood. But understanding was never their priority. Control is what they're after. And control doesn't always come in the form of overt power. It often comes disguised in emotional subtlety. They make you feel guilty for asking for the bare minimum. They make you feel ashamed of your own emotions. They make you believe you're too much when all you're really asking for is basic human decency. So you start shrinking. You speak less. You apologize more. You learn to read every little expression on their face just to avoid being a burden. And slowly, piece by piece, you lose yourself. But you know what? The day you start asking questions is the day you start coming back to life. When you begin to realize, wait a second, love shouldn't make me feel this small. When you get tired of always being the fixer, the peacekeeper, the one who bends over backward just to keep things together. When you realize you're carrying the weight of a relationship alone, that's the moment you begin to see the truth. And the truth is, the narcissist doesn't want healing. They want you to endure. Not because you're unimportant, but because your suffering makes them feel powerful. They're used to being the center of attention, the one who gets forgiven without question, the one whose comfort comes first. So when you start saying no, when you begin to withdraw your unconditional kindness, when you start loving yourself more, they see that as betrayal. They don't love you, they love the version of you that submits. And when that version disappears, they retreat. Or worse, they attack. They spread lies. They distort the story. They tell others you were the toxic one, that you were crazy, that they tried everything they could. And suddenly you haven't just lost a person, you're now faced with a covert smear campaign, behind-the-scenes gossip, and a calculated silence. A silence that isn't a clean break, it's a dagger. A message that says, I don't owe you clarity. I'll let you torture yourself with doubt. But please don't fall into that trap again. You are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. You do not need to learn to endure better. You only need one thing. The one thing every person deserves, a safe space to love, to feel, and to be fully yourself, without having to trade away your dignity. A narcissist cannot give you that space, because to create it, they would have to take off the mask they've worn their entire life, and to them, that's unthinkable. Not because they don't know the truth, but because they cannot bear the pain of facing it. And you know what? That's not your fault. The hurt you feel is real. The pain you carry is real. That confusion, not knowing what's right or wrong, wondering if you're being too sensitive, all of it is the result of prolonged and subtle manipulation. You didn't imagine it. You lived through it, but you don't have to stay there. The first step to healing isn't forgiving them. It's not even trying to understand them. It's forgiving yourself for not leaving sooner. You loved. You trusted. You tried. None of that was wrong. You simply gave those things to the wrong person. And starting today, you can choose not to hate, but to stop enduring. To stop chasing validation from someone who never intended to give it. To stop playing the role of the patient one in a story where the other character never planned to grow up. Healing is not forgetting. It's not forcing yourself to say it's all in the past. It's not pretending you're not hurt, not missing them, not angry. Healing is accepting that the wound existed and knowing that you can still go on, even if that wound is never acknowledged by the one who caused it. This is one of the hardest truths for anyone who's loved a narcissist, learning how to move on without an apology, without closure, without explanation, and sometimes without justice. You once believed that if you just explained yourself clearly enough, if you held on a little longer, if you loved a little harder, they would understand. They would feel regret. They would come back and say, I'm sorry, you deserved kindness. But that moment never came, and you started to wonder, maybe I didn't deserve it after all. No, you do deserve it. You always did. You simply gave your heart to someone who was never capable of holding it with care. They didn't come back to apologize, not because you weren't important, but because their ego was larger than the truth. They don't admit fault, not because you weren't hurt, but because to admit your pain would mean admitting they caused it. And to a narcissist, that is utterly unacceptable. So they retreat. They erase everything that happened as if nothing serious ever occurred. They live as if you never existed. And in that moment, you feel like a shadow. But hear me out with all sincerity. You are not a shadow. You are the light they couldn't hold on to. You are the reflection of kindness, something they couldn't sustain. You are the one they weren't mature enough to love. So now what? Now is the time you learn to give yourself what they never did. Recognition. You don't need closure from them because real closure isn't an apology. It's understanding. It's looking back without denial. It's facing the truth without blaming yourself. Closure doesn't come from what they say. It comes from the moment you stop waiting for them to say anything. When you stop hoping, stop scripting the fantasy. If only they changed. When you draw the final line not under the story itself, but under the illusion that it needs a happy ending for you to heal. From there, a new journey begins. Not a journey to find the right person, but a journey to become the right person for yourself. You begin small, by rewriting the truth through your lens, by naming what you went through: manipulation, denial, the erosion of your dignity, by allowing yourself to feel, to hurt, to cry, to remember without shame. No one can heal you if you keep denying your own pain. You don't have to be okay right away. You just have to be real honest with yourself. And day by day, you learn again how to say no without guilt, Set boundaries without apologizing. Choose peace over emotional entanglement that brings pain. That's not selfishness, that's growth. As you begin to rebuild yourself, you'll realize something. You were never as weak as they made you believe. Weakness is denying the truth just to protect your ego. Weakness is using silence to avoid responsibility. Weakness is watching someone hurt because of you and walking away as if nothing happened. But you hurt, and you chose to face it. You fell, but you didn't pretend. You loved genuinely, unconditionally. And even though that love cost you pain, it also proved you are far stronger than they ever were. And so you walk away. Not because you've stopped loving them, but because you've started loving yourself more. A healthy love never asks you to abandon yourself. A kind relationship doesn't make you lose direction, lose faith, or lose your self-worth. And someone truly worthy of your love will never make you feel like you need to tone yourself down, be easier, or endure more just to be loved. You don't need to be less. You just need the right person. You stayed too long because you believed real love meant suffering. But now you know love does not mean pain. Love is feeling safe in your emotions. It's being heard even when you're imperfect. It's being wrong without being punished. Being sad without being mocked. Being hurt without being shamed. You once thought that person was your destiny, the one worth fighting to keep. But what you didn't realize is they were just a lesson. A harsh, costly, necessary lesson to remind you of who you are. No one walks away from a narcissist entirely intact, but no one walks away unchanged either. You emerge deeper, braver, more real. You may have lost a person, but you found yourself. And that matters more than anything. If you've made it this far, reading these final lines, then I want you to know you are not alone. I know that feeling standing on the edge of two worlds. On one side, the illusion of love you once believed was real. On the other, the cold truth that this person will never change. And so you hover in between, unsure whether to choose honest pain or comforting lies. But what you need isn't for someone else to change. What you need is for you to wake up, to realize you are not someone's option. You are your own choice. And once you choose yourself, no one can manipulate you with silence again. No one can make you question your feelings. No one can convince you that your pain is invalid. You don't need to wait for someone to give you closure. You are the closure. When you understand the truth, when you stop justifying the unjustifiable, when you turn away from the cycles of pain, you close the old chapter and open a new one. That is why you should stay on this journey. Because this isn't just about getting over someone. It's about returning to the truest, most whole version of yourself. If what you just heard touched something deep inside you, a part that once shattered, once doubted itself, once was silenced, then don't let those feelings pass by unnoticed. Let them become your fuel. Click subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because this journey is long, and you deserve to have someone walking with you every step of the way. In the upcoming videos, I'll walk alongside you as we dive even deeper into how to rebuild your self-worth after emotional damage, into how to tell the difference between real love and disguised manipulation, into how to not only walk away, but rise above. Don't let someone else's silence define your worth. Don't let the past hold you back from the future you deserve. And never forget this. You are not weak because you've been hurt. You are strong because you still dare to believe in healing. You've already taken the first step facing the truth. Now it's time for the second, walking alongside your own healing. Subscribe. Stay. This journey is for you. And I'll be right here to remind you that you deserve a love that doesn't require losing yourself to keep it. And you'll witness something beautiful the moment you stop trying to make others understand you and begin to understand yourself. From the moment you stop sending unanswered messages, stop justifying being ignored, stop waiting on someone who never truly listened. That's the moment you return to yourself. You no longer drain your energy trying to prove you're worthy. You no longer need someone else's recognition to believe in your own value, because now more clearly than ever you see. Your worth is not measured by how others treat you, but by how you treat yourself. And you begin rebuilding from the smallest things. A glass of water you pour for yourself after a sleepless night. A decisive block after days of hesitation. A safe space you create to cry freely without shame. A journal you begin not to remember them, but to remember yourself. Each small act, even if no one sees it, is a whisper saying, I choose myself. Even if I'm not perfect, even if I'm still healing, I am still worthy. Hear this clearly. You don't need to be completely okay to be loved. You just need to be honest about where you are. And this journey doesn't need to be fast. It only needs to be real. There may be nights when you wake from a dream, heart pounding throat tight with the weight of an old memory. That's okay. That's not a setback, that's proof you're finally feeling instead of remaining numb inside an old survival mode. You might wonder at times, am I even doing the right thing? And you'll remember, you are doing the most right thing, choosing to walk away from what no longer aligns with who you are. And one day, in a quiet, ordinary moment, maybe walking under the morning sun, maybe hearing an old song that used to break you, you'll realize you're not hurting the same way anymore. Not because you forgot, but because you've grown through that pain. You've gone from needing someone to apologize just so you could feel peace, to knowing you can create peace, even without that apology. And that is freedom. Not freedom from a relationship, but freedom from the illusion that others have the power to define who you are. From here, you can begin to live again, not with a heart hardened by pain, but with a heart that sets boundaries, because it knows how to love itself properly. You can love again, but this time not to fill a void, but from a place that is already full. You can forgive, but not to let them off the hook, to release yourself from a cycle of endless inner struggle. And most of all, you no longer need someone to see you in order to know you're here, because you've learned to stand in your own light. If you've made it all the way here, I want you to know, this is not the end. This is the beginning. Not a loud, dramatic beginning, but a quiet nod, a soft smile, and a whisper to yourself. I stayed with me, and this time, I'm not leaving. If this journey touches something deep inside you, a place that once suffered in silence, cried in secret, and longed to be understood but never was, then let this channel be your space. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because here we don't just talk about the pain, we transform it. We don't just mourn what was lost. We rebuild what is more worthy. You are not weak for having trusted the wrong person. You just needed someone to tell you that trust was still beautiful and you are still worthy of love in the truest sense of the word. And if you ever need someone to remind you of that again and again, day after day, I'll be here. Because healing is real. And you don't have to walk this journey alone. You've made it to the very end of this video, and that is no coincidence. Maybe you came here with a broken heart. Maybe you're taking your first steps on the path to healing slowly, shakily, and alone. Maybe you once thought, I'll never get through this. But you're here, still listening, still breathing, still trying to make sense of what happened, and that in itself is undeniable proof. You are stronger than you think. You have loved, you have trusted, you have forgiven, you've compromised. You've carried emotional weight that should have been shared. And even if the other person never acknowledges that, the truth of it cannot be erased. The problem was never that you gave too much. The only problem was you gave it to someone incapable of valuing it. They didn't apologize not because you were wrong, but because their ego couldn't handle the truth. They stayed silent not because they forgot, but because they knew that if they spoke, they'd have to face themselves. And for a narcissist, that is unbearable. But you don't need to wait anymore. You don't need an apology to heal. You don't need closure from someone who intentionally caused you pain. You are the closure. You are the one who closes the door to the past and lights the way to something new. A new chapter where you no longer live to be understood, but live to understand yourself. A chapter where you choose truth, even when it's lonelier than comforting lies. If something in this video stirred your heart, if something deep within you finally felt named, then don't just walk away in silence. Stay. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications, because there is so much more to come on how to heal more deeply, more powerfully, more freely. Not to heal so you can return to the one who hurt you, but to heal so you never lose yourself again. You deserve a life that's not controlled by silence, guilt, or people who only feel safe when you shrink yourself. You deserve a love that doesn't require pain to prove it's real. And if you're still finding your way out of that cycle, then let me walk beside you. This journey you won't have to walk alone.